Hi everyone, it's Caroline Cousins of www.carolinecousins.com, and today I'm in discussion with the lovely Patty Post from the Netherlands. And Patty is an evolutionary astrologer, and we're going to talk about how astrology affects abundance and keep it in a very informal chat, and hopefully you'll enjoy the whole program. Now, just to quickly interject, Patty actually is part of my team for the Elite program on my website, and Patty and I work together in order to bring about effective mentoring for my clients, our clients, and Patty's going to tell you a bit more about that and how we can help. But this whole chat today is going to be on the nature of abundance and the very valuable input that astrology has within it. So welcome, Patty.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here in this lovely conversation with you, Caroline. Yes.
Oh, it's an absolute delight to have you. Thank you for coming on. Please tell me and everybody out there a bit more about yourself, and also tell me a bit more about the difference between astrology and evolutionary astrology that you do as well.
Yes, right. Yes, that's a great question. First, yes, my name is Patty Post, and I'm based in the Netherlands, and I work as an astrological coach. I have my own practice here where I help many people. It's a very busy practice. People are always looking to take the next steps in their life, grow more towards abundance. That's a lovely focus area of you. And in my coaching practice, I use evolutionary astrology. And the classic astrology is basically mostly a description of somebody's personality, talents, and some of the shadow sides. But what I found so interesting about evolutionary astrology, we are always developing ourselves. We're always growing. I am not the same person as 5 years ago, and in 3 years I'll be completely different as well. So we're continuously on this path of growth. And evolutionary astrology is really evolutionary. It's the word actually. It's the growing of consciousness, and the soul growing more and more towards being its full potential. And that's what I love working with. So I always work with growth and never with just a plain description. Yeah.
Wonderful. How long have you been doing it for, Patty?
Oh, it's been many years. I think I've started to study astrology more than 15 years ago. I've been in corporate life for over 25 years, had several roles there in HR as a project manager, also as a coach and a trainer. And I always had this love for astrology. I was always looking at the moon as well. And at a certain point, I started studying it. And like right away, I started doing this for people. I didn't want to wait. This was such a great tool to me. And in all those years, I've studied many years. And almost 4 years ago, I started my own business, and now as a full-time astrological coach. So yeah, many years.
Well, it's so interesting because, as you know, I had an HR background as well. So it's funny how we've come together, or the universe has brought us together to work together, taking the stuff that we do out there in the corporate world as well as the personal one-to-one side. But tell me, with the astrological side, was there something in you as a young girl that made you get pulled to anything astrological, or even in the esoteric field? Or was there always an interest from quite an early age in something a bit alternative?
Yeah, well, in retrospect, it's so interesting, because if you would have asked me in this year, I will be 50, I will hit the 50. But many years ago, if you would have asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I would never know. But now looking back in retrospect, I remember as a young girl having a little telescope, very cheap, looking at the moon. And I was also so fascinated by Jupiter and the big storm that was going on Jupiter. So I was getting books at the library. So the interest has already always been there. But I could only see it in retrospect, because I needed all those many years in corporate life to get all those skills there to finally really choose for astrology. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I always find that we use all the skills. So even though if we've wanted to do something from an early time, we've gone all around the houses to come back to what we originally wanted to do, or something similar to what we wanted to do, so that we use all the experience that we've gathered, not just, for instance, with the work that I do, I don't just use the experience of training from the last 15 years or so. I use all my HR background, all my other corporate stuff that I did for many, many years now, and it all comes into play in taking what we do now into the 21st century. So rather than having that old sort of new age label to it as being something separate from the mainstream, it's now, I think you do as well, it's about bringing in this stuff into the mainstream, and making it mainstream, but it has to be palatable. It has to be acceptable by the mainstream. So it can't be too way out there. It has to be something that's pragmatic in its application as well.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think I've been in training and development programs, training programs, and we had this concept of blended learning, which means that we need several modalities to actually learn things. And basically, you're talking about the same thing. We blend all that knowledge together, and I always also say everything leads to this point. So everything that I have done before leads to this point, and actually makes it like almost a holistic approach to development and growth. And I wouldn't want to be just the astrologer, and I wouldn't want to be just the HR person or I studied psychology. So for me, the blending of the two is an excellent mix, because then we can also reach people on a layer. It's the layer of almost the metaphors and the stories and the magic. We all have that layer. And if you just use the mind, it's just not enough. So at least not for me. And I see it in my clients as well.
Yeah. Can you actually do the astrology just for a company rather than for the individuals within the company? So can you do it based on, well, I guess you can. I guess you can for countries, and I guess if a company comes to you, you would need the birth date of the company, or the date it was institutionalized, or whatever the word is. Yeah.
Yes, well, yes, you can, because every organization has a birth date and time. So yes, you can cast a chart for that too. Me personally, I've always looked at teams and individuals. So I do not use the corporate birth charts. I really use the charts of the people that are involved, and that makes it also already so fascinating to see what different personalities are in a team, for instance, and how they can really synergize and unleash the potential that is there and really make teams a high-performing team. So it's an excellent tool. And yes, you can cast charts of organizations. I personally do not, because I'm so fascinated by the individual and their surroundings, their teams.
But that makes it almost more effective, or probably is more effective, using the astrology for your teams than a personality test, because a personality test often, from my experience, I never liked personality tests. I did a lot of organizational psychology, and I found that even ones that I took would differ in results depending on my mood for that particular day. But I think something like astrology coming into the workplace, and you're working with the individuals, the charts and how they work together, and find out what works and what needs more focus on or more attention on, I guess is going to be much more accurate than any kind of personality test would be.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I worked with all those personality tools as well. The MBTIs, we had the Big Five disc. These are very commonly used in organizations, and they do have value. But what I found is that the birth chart contains so much more information, and the deeper layers that are not touched by the personality instruments. So for me, having an insight in a birth chart gives me so much more information. And I actually had once a client here, and he was working with a specific type of Jungian personality instrument. And he says, this astrology is going so much deeper. And that is what I always find, because I get to that layer that I just discussed. And that makes it a more integral, more holistic view of a person. And it gives the person also like almost more, how do you say it? It's like, it's not 3D, it's 4D, it's 5D. I don't know. You get to see all these facets of basically a person, but even bigger, a soul. And that's what that is so much more valuable than just these tests that, of course, also have value. I do appreciate them, but give me astrology and I go to that deeper level. Yes.
Well, I guess it's almost an unlimited depth with astrology, and you can apply it in so many different ways and find out so much information about the individual, the potential that's there. Do you have teams that you've worked with being quite surprised with what's come up in the astrology, and have they found it to be very, very helpful? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting because if individual clients come to me, I coach a lot of coaches and entrepreneurs and leaders. They come to me by choice. But if a leader of a team decides to do this for his or her team, then people are sent to me. And that's always interesting because there is always it could be a little lack of openness towards astrology. So I had some skepticism here in my chair, but it's always so great to see how these people just completely open up and are so amazed with what the astrology can tell them. And once I had this CFO here, and he was a great guy, and he had no knowledge of astrology, and I said afterwards, I said, well, how was it for you? And he said, yes, I expected a black cat. But he was amazed.
That's the trouble, isn't it? It's the misconception. It's for me, astrology is a mathematical science. It's my limited experience of it from other people that I know is, I mean, it fascinates me. I've always been interested in it, but not to any great depth that you go into it. And the accuracy is astonishing, is absolutely astonishing. And you learn so much about yourself, you learn about what influences are around. It answers a lot of questions for me. And I think kind of our job out there is to get rid of some of this misconception about some of this older stuff out there, because it's been for many generations, it's been given a bad reputation and reputation, and it's just nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and it's a question I get asked a lot, is that can you predict my future? And the answer in a sense is always no. I can see what themes, what development opportunities are triggered, are activated, but I can never see what the consciousness of this person will do with it. So I am not a fortune teller. And this makes it a lot easier for people, because sometimes they come to me and they say it's all written in the stars, and for me that doesn't feel right. It's like a canvas, and there are some lines on this canvas, but it's up to the consciousness, the person itself, him or herself, to color it and to make the choices. And I can simply offer you the spectrum of the choices. And I think that's why our work, you and my work, blend together so well, well, because we both go in that exploration, and together with the client see, okay, how can this client can come more closer to being his or her full potential. So and that's what it is. It's not fortune telling.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, no. I totally get that. Can it pinpoint blocks in people? Can it pinpoint areas that are let's say, talking about the nature of abundance? That's what I'm specializing in. Can it pinpoint in someone's chart a block in the financial side, or a block in the health side, or a block in joy, the abundance of joy or love or anything like that? Can it do that? Can the charts that you prepare do that?
Yes, absolutely, and that makes it such an amazing craft almost. And because the birth chart contains, my beloved teacher Stephen Forrest would say, the birth chart gives gives you everything that's wrong with you and how to fix it. So that I always found an interesting statement. Basically, the birth chart contains all the patterns that are existent within the person at birth, and we are trying to overcome these patterns, and they are reflected in the analysis of the south node of the moon. There we see the patterns that we came in this life with, and these patterns can absolutely be blockages to abundance in all sorts of forms. And sometimes it's blockage in I'm not worth it, I do not deserve. Sometimes it's even completely the other way around. People who come into this world with a sense of prominence, a sense of importance, usually have a lot of money, but they can also feel blocks in abundance. It's just not money, it's other things. So it's so fascinating to always do this research and this exploration of the birth chart, because it quite easily you can immediately see and pinpoint these are the blocks. And that's why you and me work together so well, because you of course work with these blocks to get to that almost blank canvas of potential. And so yes, they are fully reflected in the birth chart. So
here's a somewhat, probably a very basic question for you, but from my perspective, you've identified the blocks for somebody, and let's say I've worked with them on a mentoring capacity, and we've shifted at least some of the blocks. Does that then show up in your astrological chart, or once those blocks are already in the chart, does that mean the blocks are already always going to be there? Because it's isn't it kind of written in stone, or will it show that actually the blocks get removed, or is that the consciousness part? Is that the individual choice part that is affecting the chart?
Yeah, actually, the answer to that question is a great question, is the latter. So the birth chart is like a map and showing where all the blocks are and how to fix them, so how you can get past. So the birth chart also gives clues on how to break these patterns, and this is material that you can work with. If I see a client, when a client comes to me, I can never see what the level of consciousness is. So what the person has done so far in his or her life, that I will have to calibrate as soon as I am in actual touch with the live soul, so to say. And your birth chart, that's the map, but it's like an organism almost. And I sometimes say to clients, hypothetically, I see you die, and you do the work. I see you die. You come back in your next life, come again to me. These are the patterns. I will not see them back in your chart, hopefully, because you have done the work. So you have this birth chart during your whole life on this earth, and you transcended the moment that you die, and you let it go, and hopefully in the next life all these patterns are mostly solved. And then we have new patterns, of course. This is the wheel of karma. We keep on doing this work. So
it won't actually show up in the chart in this lifetime. Let's say, I guess that's the future prediction, that maybe 3 years down the line, those issues aren't there anymore. It just shows, well, these are the blocks that are in the chart. This is how or these are the clues as to what you need to work on in order to shift them. So we just know that we can't predict whether that person clears the blocks or not.
No, in that sense, we cannot. But what we can see is when these themes or these patterns or these blocks are being activated. Right. And that is where the interesting part comes, because and of course, if say that I am coming here with an issue of trust, I have a hard time trusting somebody, and it's very hard for me to be in an intimate relationship because always that trust blockage is there. Say that I have done my work and I have removed a lot of those blockages, and when this theme is then again activated, it is not going to cause me a lot of sorrow and divorce or whatever, or splitting up, but it's actually giving me the opportunity to have new depth in my relationships. So I can see that it's possible to see when these themes are activated, and if you have done the work, it's just going to be a new level. So it's not that if you're halfway down your life that you have solved everything and it's done. There's always new layers. There's always new ways of going to the next level with that.
Is that harmonic astrology? Does that harmonic astrology, does that come in? Is that the different layers, or is it called a certain type of astrology? Or
it's called progressive astrology. So I don't only look at the birth chart, but I also look at the now. And the now, okay, so how are things activated for people now? And it's actually quite, if you look at development psychology, you have these different phases. And also in astrology, you can see at certain ages, we have these markers. These are these very tangible turning points in our life. And knowing these turning points can actually help you to navigate them in a more effective way. And that's how astrology can be so helpful. And but it's the birth chart and it's the progressive astrology blending together that can really help a person to grow and develop and remove those blockages. Yes.
Wonderful. So tell me, which house would rule abundance? Or will it vary depending on the area of abundance?
That for me, that would be too narrow to give that answer and say, okay, that house is abundance. And for instance, the second house in the birth chart classically always says it's the house of money. Well, and in a certain sense, it's true. But money is only the outer manifestation of inner security and confidence, basically. So it's the house of confidence. So yes, I can have a lot of money if I have, for instance, a lot of planets in my second house, but it depends on my inner state. And so it's too narrow to say, okay, if you have 5 planets in the 10th house, you will be famous. And there is like a tendency, but you will have to work as a conscious soul to actually do that work. So that would be for me too narrow to give that kind of answer. And it's always an integration of the whole birth chart. And just looking too narrow at 1 or 2 planets or houses for me does not do. It doesn't serve the soul. Actually, I always look at the complete picture. Yeah.
You know, in the esoteric field, abundance is often signified by fish, which would be the Pisces, I guess. Mm-hmm. Is there any correlation between the water signs and abundance?
That's an interesting question. And my answer would be, it could be. It could be, because say I have a lot of Pisces energy, that means I have a lot of predisposition to actually attune myself to bigger realities, have unlimited visions. That's the Pisces territory. But the other end of the spectrum, and it's my conscious choice, is that I am completely chaotic, going all over the place and not really going anywhere. So it's always our choice how to use the energy. But Pisces energy in its purest form is indeed connecting to the greater good and being connected to all that is. So yes, it would be a symbol for abundance, but it's how you use the symbol. Yeah.
So I guess what is Pisces ruled by? Is that Neptune?
Yeah, both
Pisces.
Neptune and Jupiter, that's the classical ruler of Pisces, and Jupiter is always called the great benefic in astrology, and which is not always the case in my experience, but Jupiter has this unlimited expansion kind of feel, and Pisces is like it's the question: am I a fish or am I the ocean?
Yeah.
And that's Pisces energy. Yeah.
So is it in astrology then, if someone is looking to be abundant, does the planet of Saturn have an impact, in so much as Saturn tends to be the planet of hard work, doesn't it, or the hard taskmaster? Do you see a correlation there, or do you think in astrology can you be abundant without having Saturn playing?
Well,
Then?
yeah, you ask such interesting questions, and for me, and there is, I think, the difference between a lot of ways of astrology and evolutionary astrology, because Saturn, for me, and of course, he is called the Lord of Karma, and yes, the master, and yes, indeed, Saturn enables you to do things that are hard. As the concert pianist who needs a lot of practicing before he can play in a concert hall, but Saturn is also the elder. And so it's always a symbol, and symbolism is never the same as literal. As symbolism is not literalism. So there is always this tendency with astrology to kind of pinpoint stuff, but there's always this breathing area of how people use the symbols. So again, I wouldn't say, okay, if you have a bad Saturn, it's going to be really hard to feel abundant. Yes, it's going to be a challenge, but if you have a strong Saturn, that also means you are able to do the work. And you are able to do the work. And if you feel like I can do a great work in my life, it's actually really fulfilling. And I think abundance is different in the way we experience it for everybody. And me, I am very happy-go-lucky energy, as you can see. And for me, that's feeling abundant is being like this with you right now. Other people can be more serious and more internal, and it's completely different experience of abundance. So I always want to say celebrate the diversity of mankind and all the different forms people feel abundant and can work towards abundance. Yeah.
Well, it's such an interesting point, Patty, because kind of what you're saying there is that abundance depends on your perception. So we're bringing that psychological aspect there rather than I'm going to debate that fact with you if I may, because to me abundance is getting back to 0 point. It's getting back to going above these perceptions and above these beliefs and above the feelings and above the memories, and getting back to our natural state, that 0 point state of being all that we are, and all that is. So to me, abundance is 100% recognizing you are that divine being having a human experience, and therefore there is no lack, there is no perception, there is no belief there getting in the way. The abundance of joy, the abundance of bliss, the abundance of, it's not about the materialistic side. I mean, that is the earthly side of our existence, is that we're living on an earthly plane, and if we really want to get out there and enjoy life, and we want to travel, then we have to have an abundance of resources. And I guess this is where it's using our perceptions and using our programs to help create that, to bring in what we want to use to help us live the life that we want to live. So almost buying us more freedom or buying more health. Money has a part to play in the spiritual experience on the earth. Everything is spiritual, but it's an interesting argument that abundance depends on your perceptions. That you could be feeling abundantly full of joy today, but that might not be abundance for somebody else. So yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with your point. I just have a different angle on it, because a different perspective, because I totally agree with you that we come here being abundant. Huh? If we only knew how abundant we were, we wouldn't be so miserable.
Yes.
Huh? So getting to that zero state, and that's actually the prime symbol in astrology, is not so much the birth chart, but the space around it. Huh? What Buddhists call the luminous emptiness. And but the point is, and for me, and this also is working very much in my personal life, is if this is going to be a goal that I need to go to that 0 point, every moment that I'm not there is going to feel not good. So for me, I love to see it in a way that I am on a journey towards that luminous emptiness, and I can have experiences of abundance, and I'm trying to make those increase more and more and more and more, and because otherwise it becomes an unattainable goal almost, and it can also create even more blockages if I'm not there. Then see, and that's the failure energy.
It's
so
about
I totally agree.
Yes, exactly. It's about being the abundance, and the more we're being it, of course, we're bringing it in. But we are unlimited potential within ourselves. Do the north and south nodes affect our abundance?
Well, yes, absolutely, in various ways, and this makes it so interesting that it's different for everybody. And the south node represents basically there's two angles. You can either see it as who you were in a past life, if that is a cosmology that you can handle actually, or you can see it as being inherited in family lines. That is basically, to me, it's the same thing. But those are the patterns that are actually existing when you enter this world and when you are being born. And basically what we are doing, we are trying to overcome the things that went wrong in our family lines or past lives, and to break those patterns and to grow towards that north node, which is our evolutionary future. And again, it's not a goal that we need to attain, but the birth chart gives clues on how to get there. And basically that is by removing the blocks, the blockages that are visible in the birth chart. And that is, of course, where your work comes in, to work on those specific items. And basically a birth chart can be like almost a shortcut for the work that you do. So being able to pinpoint, okay, these are the patterns and these are the blockages, is quite easy for you then to pick up and do your wonderful work on those blockages. So the north and the south node, that axis is a vital, it's the vital element of a chart interpretation from an evolutionary standpoint. Yes.
Can you actually see if somebody has had a blockage in abundance of some kind from a previous lifetime? Yes. You can. Well, with the south node.
Yes, in the south node, I have so many stories about that, and one particular comes to mind. There was this client, and she was always feeling in this lifetime a feeling of lack, and she had quite some big issues in her life with money, and money was taken from her, but not in a sense of terror. She was almost terrified about it, and you can basically see in the birth chart that this is an energy that is very known to her. This is what comes through from past lives or family lines, and so she's born with like a natural terror for being in a feeling of lack. And actually looking at the birth chart helped her to see it from a higher perspective and see that a lot of that terror is not from the now and not from this timeline. So yes, I have many stories of actual really blockages in abundance. But again, for me, abundance can appear in many forms. But sometimes it's quite literally that has to do with survival. I sometimes see very clear markers of having to having to fight for survival, and you see that tendency in this life again, where we are safe. I'm in the Netherlands, we are all safe. I don't have to lie in the gutter and rot. I'm always being taken care of. So it's strange to see that sometimes people are so terrified. But then if you look at the birth chart, you see, that's why.
And does that show
work on it?
Does that show the ancestral lines as well?
Yes.
So it's so interesting, because when I work with clients, and I work very intuitively, you know how I work, and often I can see other lifetimes with people, and I can also pick up if it's ancestral as well. And I can have a client sitting with me or online, and the moment I say, you didn't create this, you came in with this energy, whether it's other lifetime or whether it's ancestral, it's like their shoulders drop. And there's such a relief there, because we as humans carry around such a lot of blame, self-blame of, it's all my fault, what have I done wrong, all the time. So it's fascinating. I can imagine when you're seeing clients and you can see these patterns, especially coming with the South nodes, and you can see that they've come in with it. It must be really quite a relief as well to know that, I understand now, because some of them I get a like, I can't see where it's originated from. They're trying their best to understand it, and we don't need to understand it to shift it. But it helps sometimes to know what the pattern is. It helps to know what the influence is, because it makes us feel a little bit more in control of our lives, and we get a little bit more clarity as to where to go next and what to do next, to help us to live a more fulfilling life. So you must see that as well. You must see the reactions in clients changing hugely.
Absolutely, and relief is a big part of it, and of course, and that's why I think I work as a coach. I don't do the hit and run astrology. I rather not. So you can come here and I give you 2 hours of this this exploration of your the ice cream. Ice cream passing by. Ice cream.
Oh, lovely! It's a sign. Yeah. The abundance sign.
It's abundance. Ice cream. Yeah. So I can work with a client for 2 hours and tell them everything and all this interesting stuff that we are talking about. But then they leave, and it's so easy because a pattern has it has the tendency to repeat itself. So that's why I always like to work longer with clients, more like in a program. And that's why I love working with you, because the awareness is usually not enough to really shift something. And the relief can really shift something in the awareness, so something significant can actually really happen. But then you will have to keep on working with it. And so that's why I love being, for instance, in this program with you, where you can actually take this client and start shifting and really do the work over a longer period of time, because just one hit and run session usually doesn't do the trick.
No, this is why I prefer to work.
Help. Yeah, we usually need help to get past these patterns, and
I mean, I get the same with clients as well, where you do have some historically that have come in, one session fix all, and it doesn't work. There has to be a commitment. There has to be a journey. And a regularity, and it's not about making it a habit so much. It's not about getting obsessed about clearing, because otherwise you're always going to have something to clear. You're always it's the wrong focus. It is about committing to breaking through those blockages that are preventing you from having a free life, or one of abundance there. So we can use both astrology and the work that I'm doing in clearing the blocks, to manifest that health, manifest that wealth, manifest that joy. And I mean, I find that using the astrological side with my work, with the mentoring, and the shifting of the subconscious blocks and the shifting of the astrological and the other lifetime blocks, it just seems to fast track that whole process, bringing about greater understanding, bringing about success in a much bigger way and a much more informed way with the client. So they really get to take control of their life rather than looking for someone to fix them. They get to take responsibility and get to dictate the course of their life more. So yeah. I guess the astrological side, I mean, when you hear people saying, well, my life is all set in stone, if it's all written in the stars, is it all set in stone? What do you say to them? Do you just say, well, actually, no, it's just full of potential, it's full of opportunities, and it's full of influences, but you get to choose the effect of the influences?
Yeah, in a way, that is what I say to them. But it's also, I think all coaching, therapy, mentoring should lead towards one goal, and that is putting the client back into their autonomy.
Yes.
It's one of the 3 psychological fundaments that we all need. We want to be connected, we want to be competent, and we want to be autonomous. And our work, and I know you do that too, is not to make people dependent of us, but really put them into their autonomy. And if people say to me, well, everything is written in the stars, that is a serious lack of being at the steering wheel of your life. So yes, it would be something in like you just stated, that I take this client by the hand to see, yes, but you have a choice. Of course you have a choice. You are an autonomous being. You can be behind the steering wheel of your own life and make those choices. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you see any trends happening in the astrology, the astrological influences out there at the moment, or within the people that you're working with? Do you see any abundance trends or consciousness trends that are happening at the moment?
Yeah, well, a lot also has to do with me, of course, because I am growing and I'm developing myself, so I am attracting also different people and a different audience. So a lot has to do with my consciousness as well, and we are kind of magnetic for our inner state. That's one piece of the puzzle, and I think on a global level there is so much more interest and so much more science also. Had quantum physics, and you see that coming in. You see a lot of exploration actually in the actual space. We are finding new planets almost daily. So, and what do they mean? So there is this expansion going on. But I like to keep it in for me, so I can see, okay, my growth, my consciousness is emanating and is attracting the sort of clients that I work with, and that is what I very clearly see in my own life. And for the rest, I'm absolutely fascinated with every discovery that we are doing right now, both in space, in consciousness, in science, technology. It's absolutely fascinating, and it also has its hooks in astrology more and more. Yes.
It's so interesting. Yesterday I watched for the umpteenth time Apollo 13 film.
Right.
And because we got, 50 years this year since man walked on the moon. And I watched First Man the other day, the more recent film, Ryan Gosling. And something about that whole era of space exploration has always interested me as well. And there just seems something energetically poignant about it at the moment. And it could be, as you pointed out, it's all about us, and the way I approach life is that there are no others in the world. Everyone that's coming into the world is a construct in some way that's interacting within my world, like a holographic image, the same as I might be a holographic image in your world. You may well be you're a holographic image in my world, but we're all interacting, we're all working together, we're all fragments of that one energy, and therefore whatever abundance is in our lives is representative of what we're holding within. So that as we shift those blocks, as we learn, as we experience life and expand our awareness. So we find, you and I find the same thing, that our client base tends to change. And my client base has changed a lot from the early days in comparison to what it is now, and it's constantly changing, and I'm constantly getting new people like yourself, new people coming in who are really bringing in interest, who've really had interesting lives, interesting experiences. And what I find, I'm getting really super achievers coming into my life. Now, I won't get into any details, but people who really several people have come in who've really achieved some big stuff, as I've worked on my abundant blocks and shifted those. So the people coming into my life really have been quite different from maybe even 5 or 10 years ago, and I guess you must find that in yours as well. So in terms of astrology, then, what would that show in my chart? Would it just show, would it be the same influences that I've always had, or would it be that I've got a particular house being aspected? Would it show that there are just more opportunities coming in that would be represented in my chart? What would that show to me if I was coming to you for?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, and we kind of talked about this before, because I see these opportunities as a spectrum, and what I can offer you is the higher choice, and I can also show you what the lower choice is. So a high response to certain dynamics going on in your chart, or the low response. Right. And basically, I always also we're in this together. We're all in this together. Yeah. So I'm not better or worse than anybody else. Huh? Sometimes I do feel worse than anybody else, and that's again an abundance block. Huh?
Yes.
So we're all in this together. But I also want to put things into perspective, because basically, the little bug born under a rock, born at the same time as I, has the same birth chart, but it's a different kind of consciousness. So again, and that's where this free will part comes in. And I see actually the same thing, because my client base is so much evolving to people who really want to change the world, want to work at the big things, problems that are going on. And I think our whole collective is shifting in consciousness, because we are all doing the work, and we're all in this again together. So again, if something is activated in the chart, we can always talk about what is the high response and what is the low response, but the choice will always be yours and mine to make. And we're all transcending, basically at the birth chart. We keep the birth chart for the rest of our lives. We're just adding new layers of potential, going back to that zero state more and more. Had the zero state that you talked about, had a blank canvas, that we are basically everything, and we need the map of the birth chart to get there. But it's like a staircase. There's always you can take the next step there. Yeah.
Is there anything that any clients that you've worked with where they just haven't got it, they just haven't understood, or they've just refuted everything that's been said? Have you ever had any difficulties there?
Well, that's again an interesting question, and I think it has a lot to do with my inner work. But because when I started out years and years ago, I would have these people, but then I was so much in doubt about my own capabilities and my own potential myself, and that was just reflected in some of the clients that I got in. So I can tell by the clients that are coming in, how well am I doing on the inside, basically. So again, we're in this together, and I just emanate this energy, attracting the client base that matches this frequency, this energy. And so yes, the answer is yes, but it's been many years ago, and which to me feels good. And of course, not everybody that comes in here is happy and abundant. No, but mostly people that really feel like that on some level they feel they are okay and they have a lot of talents and potential, but there still has some blockages that they would like to shift. But also taking again that next step. We're always growing, always growing.
Yeah, I think that's important to stress, because doing the work that we do, a lot of people have this assumption out there that you're all sorted, you know, you've done all your stuff, and it just so isn't true. You know, I'm constantly a work in progress, and you know, I have my moments where the ego behavior will take over, and then I look at it afterwards and I think, oh, why did I react that way, or why did I do that? And I think that's important for people to recognize that, you know, we're all, I mean, you and I have done a lot of work on ourselves, and but there's always more. And there's always more to learn, there's always more to experience, there's always more to understand, there's always more to let go of, clear, clean, integrate, release, whatever you want to call it. There's always something there, you know, to work with.
And that's actually because what you're talking about now is actually very much represented in our birth chart in the sign of Virgo. We all have a piece of Virgo in us. Some have a lot of Virgo, like you. I have a lot of Virgo too, but we all have Virgo in our birth chart in some way. And Virgo is really one of these signs that is the most connected to growth and a growth mindset. There's always more, you can always do better, you can always be more perfect. And this Virgo archetype in us may shift to feeling, okay, I'm on this path of growth, and yes, this is where I can grow towards, but where I am okay. And that is, I think, the most important thing that I've learned also about myself, to really see, okay, yes, there are still things wrong with me, or things that feel like blockages, but really connecting to the fact that I am okay already. That helps me to keep on doing the work without being it like a sluggish way and going through the mud, because that's south node behavior. It's pulling me back to these it has gravity almost. So that is, I think, the most important mindset change that we need, that we are on this path of growth, and that where we are okay, we are 100% okay already.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I wrote a monthly column. I write a monthly column in the local paper, and this month it was on the issue or the concept of self-worth. And fundamentally, I mean, self-worth doesn't actually exist. It's a construct of the mind, and we get bombarded with all this marketing material, and we're conditioned over the world, you know, throughout the world to focus on the way we look, to focus on, you know, I'm worth it, and well, I deserve it, and all of that. But actually, fundamentally, what we're all looking for is self-acceptance. We're all wanting to know that we're enough, and we're all searching at some level or another that self-acceptance, and that's all. That's the key to me. It's just that self-acceptance, to know we're enough as we are. And you know, I make mistakes, you know, you make mistakes, we all make mistakes in the world, you know, we all, doesn't matter how much work we put in, we're all just striving to be maybe a better person than we were yesterday. It's not about anybody else, it's not about competition, it's about having a little bit more self-acceptance every single day, knowing that we are enough all the time. And I think the more that we do that, then the closer we get back to our true nature, which is abundance. So the more we accept that just as we are right now, this precise moment right now, we are enough. That opens up the whole realm of abundance. That opens up so much more to come in. If only we would just relax and just accept, then we're in that abundance stream there and then. But we're human, and we have guilt and there's blame, and then with the stuff that we brought in with us, the influences of our, you know, childhood and the ancestral energy and everything else coming into the mix, all those programs and data. That's all it is data. It's noise. It's in there, and you know, understanding where it's coming from is helping us to release a lot of that and not give it so much attention, not give it so much focus, and accepting that we are enough in the process. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add, Patty, before we finish off from today?
I guess we could talk for hours and hours, Caroline, and I'd love to. But for now, I think we have covered quite some great subjects and some fascinating areas. And yeah, no, it was an absolute delight to have this conversation with you, Caroline. Yes,
that's wonderful. Well, where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at pattypost.nl/en. I have an English version of my website, also a Dutch version, of course, but pattypost.nl/en.
Wonderful. Patty also has an excellent newsletter in English as well, and has started on her YouTube channel. You started doing English videos as well as the Dutch ones.
Yes.
And you got some giveaways, I think, as well coming up with some of those. So and they're brilliant because I've seen them, and they are excellent. So do sign up to Patty's newsletter if you want to have the benefit of both Patty and myself helping you in your company or in a personal basis. Then have a look on my website, carolinecousins.com, and under Elite Programs, Patty and I work together to bring about the whole mentoring process of shifting the blocks that are preventing you from living the life of your dreams. So my name's Caroline Cousins. I work as a mentor and inner transformation coach, specializing in clearing abundance blocks. And this was my interview with Patty Post today, who's an evolutionary astrologer and coach, an all-round lovely person. Signing off, do please get in contact if you'd like to know more. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.